Hello and welcome to the Highway to Health show. In today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Gordon Pedersen. This man is a trove of information. He's a clinician, a researcher, and an entrepreneur who has been involved in the health and wellness field for several decades. He has authored numerous books, and some of his most notable achievements have to do with the use of silver as a healing tool. We discuss that at length in this episode, but we also talk about achieving optimal health, the relation between your gut and your brain, and many other things. But before we get to it, let me remind you that last week we had Sass Edwards, a mindset coach helping people go through cancer by improving their mindset and helping them regain their health. Sass is a cancer survivor herself, and she shares a lot of her journey and how that got her in the path of helping others overcome devastating diagnosis. That was in episode 19 in case you missed it. This episode is brought to you by our Highway to Health Facebook group. If you haven't yet joined us, you can do so by heading over to dre.show/group and click on the appropriate button. You can also find that link on this episode's description, by the way. But now, here's my conversation with Dr. Gordon Pedersen. I hope you enjoy it. And remember, you're on the Highway to Health, and I'm your guide to get you there.
Are you ready to live ageless? Want to discover alternative health choices, cutting-edge nutrition, and fitness for the entire family? Welcome to Highway to Health Show with your host, Dr. E, the Stem Cell Guy, where Dr. E helps you live ageless. And now, here's your host, Dr. E.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Highway to Health show. Today's guest is Dr. Gordon Pedersen. And I say that way because he's a doctor of naturopathic medicine, as well as a PhD in toxicology and a PhD in immunology and biology. He's the only intern of Jonas Salk, the medical researcher who discovered and developed the polio vaccine. And he's also a best-selling author many times over in the fields of health and wellness, and is all in all a huge authority in the field. Today, he's joining us to talk about the immune system, how our gut microbiome affects our brains, and about the great things that happen when we utilize silver and leverage it for health. So, Dr. Pedersen, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here.
So I was just saying, what brought you to actually pursue a medical degree and then get 2 additional PhDs as if one wasn't enough?
Well, I found that all branches of medical disciplines don't have all the answers. In other words, my brother had a very big need with Crohn's disease. My family had cancer in it every single generation for a lot of years. And I wanted to find an alternative that would help because Western and traditional medicine didn't seem to be good enough. It didn't have all the answers. So the reality is I was just searching for answers for all of my family members that had alternative needs, and it just kept me going and going and going. And I think that continuing education is essential to one's wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more with you. Now, in your experience, one as a clinician and the other one as a researcher, because a lot of people don't realize this, that in order to get a PhD, you need to actually do research. People think that it's just a lot of schooling and that you just sit through a lot of different lectures and eventually get a PhD. But in reality, the PhD is you're doing a lot of research in a specific field. In your experience, what are the top misconceptions that traditional healthcare is missing? Why are we so far from health today?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's based on all of my degrees come to my learning, and that is I believe the human body will heal itself if you give it the proper tools. And it's obvious we're not giving our body all the proper tools it needs to heal itself. Sometimes we're doing the work for it. For instance, I was on a chemotherapy board at one time, and I found in the research and in my research that chemotherapy was only curing cancer 6% of the time. And I said, wait a minute. We're putting all this radiation in somebody, destroying any and all of the tissue, and then hoping for a cure when we could be stimulating the immune system, working with the body. And so I think one of the biggest obstacles to wellness is that we don't pick the tools that help ourselves heal ourselves. And it starts with ourselves. We don't always have the right attitude, and medicine doesn't always have the right attitude. Their attitude is, we'll fix whatever we have to right now. But if people let them and there's no prevention, I think there's a big disconnect on both parts.
Yeah, and lately we've been having a lot of different conversations with people on all sorts of walks of health and wellness. And in reality, what we're seeing is a lot of that. We failed as patients, let's say, or as a non-clinicians, to understand that health is an active pursuit. It's not just the absence of disease, but it's something that we have to actively be pursuing. Is this something that you would agree with?
It is. And I actually have a philosophy that I put in all my books, the essence of wellness. Now, the word essence, it literally means the most important part of something. So the essence of wellness would be the most important part of wellness. This is just a book I picked up just now. And this is one I wrote, and it says Essence of Wellness. And in here, this happens to be a book for women's health. And in here, it talks about the mnemonic essence, where every letter in the word essence is one principle of wellness that you should be responsible for. E is for eat. S is for sleep. E is for exercise. S is for supplement. E is for we need to eliminate stress. C is for clean water. Now, I got those out of order. Eat, sleep, supplement, exercise, neutralize toxins, clean water, and eliminate stress. And so when you put the essence of wellness in your control, you start to realize that this is not just a good common sense idea. It's actually common sense medicine. My research, when I was doing toxicology research, I actually took exercise, and different types of exercise elicited different immune responses on natural killer cells and other important immune cells in the body. Then I took and I included that with an herbal supplement. And what happened was with exercise alone, we would get an immune system increase of about 37%. And we said, hey, that's nice, that's new. But when we combined it with certain herbal supplements, we'd get 255%. Then when we include it with sleep, we'd again get a higher increase. So what was happening is I discovered for myself is that when you eat and sleep and exercise and do all of these components of the essence of wellness, each one builds like compounding interest in the bank. Everyone builds on another one. And so that's why I like people to take control of their own essence of wellness.
Exactly. Each one of those synergistically adds to the mix. And I think the great thing about every single one of those components of what you refer to as the essence of wellness are things that are within our control. There is no question about whether we can control how we sleep, the quality of our sleep, the time that we spend in bed. There's no question about whether we can control what we eat, how to avoid certain toxins. Our listeners have heard this before because we've spoken to people who talk about environmental medicine and how we need to be careful, not just of what we put in our bodies, but also what we surround ourselves with. So all of those things we are incredibly empowered to do. None of those components are the medications that you take, correct?
That's correct. We certainly don't have a deficiency of tetracycline in our body, for instance. And you've heard that before. But the reality is that I have seen in the rehabilitation of patients that some of them that never, ever should have gotten well carry such a great attitude and such a willingness to work with their body that they get well even when the doctors are scratching their heads going, we don't know why. And I've seen the opposite. When people go in for a minor surgery and they get so freaked out, so much anxiety, so much worry, they give up and they actually die from something that they shouldn't have ever died from. That kind of triggered me to thinking as well, where is my mind? Where am I at? What am I thinking about? And what am I doing every single day to deserve the healing that I might need during a medical crisis?
Exactly. Now, talking about mind, and we've spoken about mindset here in other episodes, and we understand how tremendously impactful it is. But I know that you're particularly qualified to talk about some other things that affect our mindset, and it is that axis between our gut and the gut microbiome and how that affects the way we think. And people think that it's just a matter of putting in positive thoughts in your head, but in reality, our brain is being hijacked by these little bugs, is it not?
Wow, hijacked is actually a really great word. But if you imagine all of these neurons wrapped around your stomach and your intestines, sending signals back to the brain. Now, imagine that your intestines get about 2 weeks of an antibiotic destroying all the bacteria in there. Now, the yeast takes over and starts to consume the lining of your intestine. You're going to get a signal. It's going to go to your brain. So, in short, what that means is your gut is directly connected to your brain by a nerve. Now, this vagus nerve takes the signal to the brain. When it gets to the brain, it's going to trigger neurotransmitters, chemicals in the brain. And as long as you've got bad bacteria or harmful yeast in your gut, you're going to have a constant signal or a constant flow of these neurotransmitters, chemicals that are bathing the brain in neurotransmission, which means it might be serotonin or dopamine or acetylcholine, whatever it is. It may be the very chemical that triggers anxiety or triggers depression or triggers some form of mood problem or personality disorder. We can actually see and measure this. So when your gut isn't normal, when you've got too much bacteria that's harmful, too much yeast that's harmful, the constant signal goes through the immune system, goes through the hormone system, and goes by nerve to the brain, and it constantly bathes it in neurotransmitters that are telling your brain to be anxiety ridden or worry ridden. And so some people think, have I lost my mind? And the reality is, have you lost your gut? Have you got a problem in your gut?
And it also helps to explain why sometimes we feel so blue or so down when we have certain meals. And I remember before I was more knowledgeable about this, we were sharing before that my background, I've been working with the autism community for a long time. And I learned from many of these parents the importance of nourishing the gut and all these things, and from a lot of the practitioners as well, once I started getting trained. And what I realized is that what I first used to think as, well, that really doesn't make any sense. You know, you feel bad when you go to McDonald's or KFC or all those things because you feel that kind of like guilt of doing something bad for your body. But in reality, now I understand, it's like, no, those frankenfoods are actually creating an effect that is releasing all these different neurotransmitters in your head. So it actually explains why when you eat well, you feel great. And when you don't eat so well, you don't feel so great.
Well, and it's exactly why when I have people that come to me and I consult with them about what they should or shouldn't do with this problem, the first thing I do is we've got to get rid of the bad bacteria and the bad yeast. Well, if I give you an antibiotic, that will only kill bacteria, but it makes the yeast grow. And if I give you an antifungal drug, it will make your bacteria grow. And so we go through this back and forth. Yet I've discovered that if I give them silver, it destroys bacteria, viruses, and yeast all at the same time. And then I follow up with probiotics to restore proper gut function as healthy bacteria. And we remove sugar and processed foods from their diet. Those are kind of the tools that I use when I consult with people. But silver is absolutely, well, it's God's gift. It's His invention. It's His creation. We've just been wise enough to learn how to use it because it's natural and it's from all natural sources. We don't have side effect problems.
So tell me a little bit more about silver. Why is it not more widely spread? I've personally learned about it in the last couple of years, maybe even months. And the more I read about it, it's kind of like what's happening now with the CBDs, that people are suddenly realizing that, wow, there's really a lot of benefit behind it. Why do you think silver is so unknown?
Well, silver was not unknown. It was in the physician's desk reference up until 1924 when the patent expired on silver. It was called colloidal silver or ionic silver at the time. And the patent expired, so no drug company could then isolate and monopolize that product. Then 10 years or so later, here comes penicillin. Penicillin's the wonder drug. It does everything. In a petri dish, it destroys germs a little bit quicker than silver did. They abandoned silver altogether, moved forward with the penicillin. And so why isn't it more well known? Well, there's 42 drugs in the physician's desk reference that include silver. Some of them are IVs, some of them are eye drops, some of them are gels, but every burn unit in the world uses silver on burns because it stops the infection, bacteria, viruses, and yeast, and it leaves behind the activated stem cells that make the body help heal itself. So all burn units know that the number one tool for burns is a silver product. And so why don't we see it more readily out there? I'd like to say I know I don't, but I am very suspicious of the fact that because the patent expired, it's not a product that's going to be able to be marked up 5,000 times.
I like how you're so careful with saying you're just mildly suspicious. I'm sure I've seen my fair share of those kind of cases in the regenerative medicine field, and I know exactly what you're trying to say. And I'm sure our listeners are understanding that as well. Now, one of the things that we did touch upon very briefly right now is talking about autistic children. And we know that there is an important gut dysbioses where a lot of the times it's a lot of yeast. There's a yeast overgrowth and they're obsessed with sugar and all those things. And it is easy or kind of like straightforward to look for dysbioses in a specific population, especially when they have its concrete diagnosis. How common is this? And I think I know the answer, but how common is this in the day-to-day population, in the everyday person?
Well, I think the everyday person, about 50% of us have some form of dysbiosis. And it's not just because of antibiotics, but it's also because of the foods we eat that have different types of pesticides and pollution and even antibacterial medications sprayed on the foods that we eat. So every day we're getting a low dose poisoning going into our body. We're also eating way too much sugar, which feeds yeast. And then you combine that with the average child getting 18 doses of antibiotics before they're fully mature, suggests to me very strongly that we've grown up with this situation and we bring it on ourselves. And I don't know that everybody knows how to get away from it is the problem. I think people would, but this is the kind of show where people are going to listen to people with expertise that said, this is a problem. This is what's going on. This is how you solve it. And I think they'll do it.
You know what? I think you just hit the nail on the head. That's the reason why I decided to embark on this project, because I realized that health is more of a common sense thing, but only when you realize the stakes, only when you realize what you're actually doing. And that's the thing. Most people go through life not realizing what they're actually doing. So they put themselves in certain situations, certain environments that they hear, and they're doing antibacterial everything. Then they're filling their houses with Wi-Fi and with different kinds of radiation and different kinds of pollutions and all these different things that we're simply doing because we're not aware of the dangers. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, so that we can highlight these different dangers.
I find it highly ironic that I have gone through the toxicology program, and toxic is the main word. Ology means the study of toxics, and it was a drug research program. And I realized that all drugs are toxic. I mean, when was the last time you saw a commercial on TV and you heard that list of side effects? And it starts out with dizziness, and it goes to blindness, and it goes to kidney problems, and it starts shifting into things that actually shock you. I mean, I saw one the other day that said sexual dwarfism. And I thought to myself, what on earth is sexual dwarfism from taking a medication? And I realized I'm so lucky to be involved in the toxicology of natural substances for that reason. And it's very, very interesting in the autistic world you were talking about. Just today, I got done visiting with a person who spent 2 years coming out of this autistic state that he was in. Let me go back a little bit. He got vaccinated, and they gave him 4 vaccinations at one time. Within 2 weeks, he had gone from a normal state and slid into an autistic high-functioning state. And what happened is his father was a naturopathic doctor, put him on all these different cleanses, starting with silver to destroy and rebuild the gut, then probiotics, and then went right through step by step by step to rebuild that. 2 years later, he's back in the workforce. He's back to normal. And that is the greatest case and example I've seen of, here's a child. Well, he was actually, I think, 11 when this happened. So he remembered being totally normal, dropped into an abnormal state, and took 2 years to work his way back out of that toxicity. And even though he has thrush in the back of his throat all the time, he's now realized he can keep that yeast under control. And this is what he uses, the silver solution. So it's a structured alkaline silver. And if he doesn't use it on a daily basis, he says he can feel himself slipping back into a position he was in. And that's the biggest learning experience I've had in this autistic arena. I've seen it for years and years and years and years, but that one really explained it to me.
Now, I was actually going to ask this of you in regards to silver. Is this something that we'd consider some sort of a supplement, some sort of a part of a wellness routine, or is this silver just for therapeutic purposes?
Well, the silver of the past, or inferior silvers, I call them, because they were all strong acids, pH of about 4.5. Why put another strong acid in your body unless you have an emergency? So for the past 100 years, that's how they used it during an emergency, and it had some good benefits. Well, now I've developed a product that's alkaline, pH balanced, because I want to be able to put this in my body every single day for the protection it gives to me. Now, how safe is it? Well, if you remember, in the medical studies we all got, a baby, when it's first born, within its first 30 minutes of life, gets an eyedropper filled with liquid silver squirted into its eye. The most vulnerable organ, getting the most vulnerable time in its entire life, a full dose of liquid silver. I think that summarizes how safe it is. Why? It destroys the bacteria, viruses, and yeast that might cause blindness otherwise. So that's a great thing that we know in the medical world and history as well.
So how would people actually learn more, and how can they figure out if this is something that they want to start doing, and what are the benefits that everyday person can come to expect?
Well, it's my cause to help educate people on silver and on its benefits because it's all natural. I like people to go to my website, which is mydoctorsuggests.com. There's over 200 videos, a lot of them 2 minutes on a specific topic, so that I can help educate people. In addition, I've written several books. Here's 2 of them just floating around on my desk. And these books will be on my website as well. This one is for silver in animals. It helps the family's health with the animals as well. Here's one for women. There's another one called Silver Miracles. And I want this message out so bad that if you'll go to mydoctorsuggests.com, when you find one of these books under the book section, click on it. It'll automatically be sent to your website. So you can digitally have my books right now. You can start reading and learning right now. And we just want you to know there is another way.
Exactly. And, I think that's great work that you're doing, because most of the time, like we were saying earlier, people really want to do what's best for them, but they simply don't have access to reliable information. And it's not a matter anymore of not having access to the information. The thing is, they have so much information out there that they don't have access to reliable sources of information, because nowadays anyone with an internet connection is an expert, right? And can come out there and start touting whatever the hell they want. And people don't really know. I mean, the kind of things that you see online, I'm sure that you see a lot of these as well, the kinds of recommendations that people are making of, in terms of nutrition, diet, exercise, lifestyle, anything and everything. And you suddenly realize, I cannot believe that people are actually listening and following this advice. So thank you so much for putting those out there. Once again, everyone, that's mydoctorsuggests.com. And I'll make sure to link to all of that in our show notes. Now, how long have you actually been utilizing silver in your practice?
Well, about 15 years. And I realized that NASA was sending it up on the space shuttle. I thought, well, if they can't send up a doctor, what are they going to send? And it turns out they were sending up silver. I saw in the emergency room babies with diaper rash so bad they had to be in the ER. And they put silver on them, and they healed literally in the hour I sat there and watched. And I thought, there's got to be something more to this than just drug use. And so I started delving into that arena. And then when my family members got Crohn's disease and cancer and other things, I just had to learn more about the natural aspects of silver. And so now I have a liquid silver, I have a gel silver. My gosh, this is the most wonderful thing for women in their women's parts because this destroys bacteria, viruses, and the yeast infection. You just have to put it in the vaginal area. But imagine lozenges. Look at this. I'm sucking on one right now. I put silver in a lozenge because children need to go to school with silver in their mouth so that it helps the whole respiratory system, help them during the cold and flu season. We have soap, we have lotion.
Well, you also have the flu vaccine.
Oh, that's true. What do you think about the flu vaccine? Would you get the flu vaccine this year?
No, we did not get the flu vaccines. And I want to be very clear. I'm always very clear about this on the show. I'm not against vaccines by any means. As a matter of fact, our baby has had most of the vaccines that he's supposed to have at this time. We've created a modified schedule that I feel is less taxing on his immune system, especially like on a big lump. But the flu vaccine is one that I simply can't stand behind, but it has such a low positive hit rate. I almost feel like they never get it right. You know, my wife got the flu vaccine last year, and it's the only time she's actually had the flu.
Well, if it's okay, and I take a minute to give you an opinion on this.
Sure, of course.
I don't want people to wonder where I stand on this. It's very simple. Most physicians need to go and read the entire prescribing information of the vaccinations they're going to give. The side effects are enormous, but more importantly, when you read this prescribing information, you're going to learn that number one, there's 3 steps you have to follow that aren't being followed. Number one, you're not supposed to give a vaccination to a person that is immune incompetent. And that usually means before age 2. Then the immune system is finally at a place where it can build up the proper response. So don't give it to them too early. We never give a vaccination when the child is sick. Why? If there's a virus already in there, the DNA from the other virus could mix together and make a very nasty response, leading to autoimmunity or a lifetime of problems. In addition to that, we never are supposed to give vaccinations in combinations. You're not supposed to mix the viruses so that they can become a super virus out there yet. How do moms go to the doctor and get vaccinations? Well, my kid has a cough, green boogers running out of his nose, can't sleep the night, got a fever. In the baby goes. The doctor says, oh, while he's here, get him fully vaccinated. The nurse says, yeah, but he's only 14 months old. Oh, that's close enough to 2 years old. Give him to him anyway. Well, he hasn't had 2 of the other ones. Oh, catch him up on all the other boosters. And you know what? You end up with a child too young getting a vaccination while he or she is sick and giving them in mixed combinations to catch up. If the doctors would just read the information and follow it completely, most of the problems would never exist in the beginning.
And here's the thing that I see and why I believe a lot of us actually don't read that or even don't pay a lot of attention to it. It's because most kids are okay after vaccinations. So we're still in our heads playing that numbers game. And we're still saying like, well, you know, the cost to benefit ratio is still positive. But after the first couple of years, even months of me working with the autistic community, I very clearly learned that that's not something you can explain to a family who has an injured child.
No, but this is what I do for my family, and this might help. I actually take the liquid silver and I give my children 2 teaspoons twice a day for 5 days in a row. Then they get the vaccination. Here's my thinking. If I can destroy the bacteria, viruses, and yeast that are already in my child's body, then when they get the vaccination, the big problem of mixing and combining other germs together with the current vaccination aren't going to happen nearly as much. So that was my thinking, and that's how my children got their vaccination.
Well, there you go. That's another great alternative. Like I said, I'm not against vaccination. Our child has gotten them on a modified schedule that I've discussed with our pediatricians. But, you know, this is another great alternative. I'm sure that people are really going to be grateful for this. Before we wrap this up, I know that a lot of people are going to be interested to learn more about silver. You've given us a lot of resources, but if they wanted to go out there and get them, what are the things that they need to look out for? Because I'm sure that there's also some sketchy manufacturers out there.
If you look for the word pH balanced, if you look for the word alkaline, and you look for the word structured, that makes the silver being manufactured with structured water so that it can cut through biofilms like the kind in your gut. And the pH balancing is very important because if you put acid in your body, your immune system immediately isolates it, tries to sequester it to one place, and then sends in inflammation. In other words, it rejects it. So why put a strong acid in your body when you're trying to heal the whole body? So ionic silver, never buy it. That was photographic solutions. Colloidal silvers, those are the inferior silvers of the past made with a 9-volt battery or nitric acid. You don't want those because they're old, they're inferior, they fall out of solution. Now, we've got structured alkaline silver. My books will give you a lot of information on all the different reasons why it's so much superior. Go ahead on my website, click on a book, and in a short read, you'll understand exactly what it's for. And more importantly, you'll start to understand how to use it. For instance, I have a sinus problem in the winter. Many people do. I take this little spray bottle, fill it up with liquid silver, 3 pumps right in my nostrils, inhale it, tip my head back. It just went up in my sinuses, down the back of my throat. This is a godsend when I take it to work every day. Eyedroppers with liquid silver. I have a sprayer for the house or for hotel rooms. It sprays on doorknobs, fridge handles, and that dreaded drinking fountain at elementary school. You know what? I love my lozenges. I've discovered a way to put liquid silver into a lozenge so you get a full dose with every lozenge. These are just things that when you learn how to use them, my gosh, look at this. Put it in the nostril, pump the liquid silver up and out. This way it helps break up congestion. And gel, women, you're going to love me for this. This tool is so valuable for women. I think it's the most used way we give the silver. If my finger were a tampon and I pumped silver gel all over that tampon, insert it at night, take it out in the morning, the silver has destroyed the yeast infection, the bacterial infection, and the viral infection during the night. Do it 3 nights in a row. You're going to be happy with the results of that. And one other way to use it that I really, really love is to drink 4 ounces. Yeah, 4 ounces at one time. An hour later, drink 1 ounce. An hour later, drink 1 ounce. An hour later, drink 1 ounce. You've now taken basically half the bottle in 4 hours, but it now pools in the bladder because silver doesn't change in metabolism. It is the same as it leaves the body as it goes in. You want a whole pool in your bladder if you have a bladder problem. So in comes the fluid, it fills up your whole bladder, it sits in there until you urinate it out. It's the most terrific way to deal with something down in the bladder. Anyway, that's just some ways to use it. My book will tell you some more. And just knowing how to use it will help you take the obstacles of wellness out of your life.
Wow, I think those are all tremendous applications, tremendous uses for a relatively simple approach. And it's something that, based on what you've shared and based on the information that you have published and all these things, it's something that pretty much anyone listening can start incorporating into their wellness routine. I don't even like to call it into their treatments or into their things. This is part of your wellness routine. It's something that we should all be doing. Is this accurate?
Yes, it's called the essence of wellness. I know you get a kick out of that, but almost every doctor that I've talked to agrees that if people will take control of that essence of wellness themselves, that everything else doctors do will work so much better.
Absolutely. And that's something that we strive for. And that's something that we always emphasize the importance of, because in reality, as physicians, we're just facilitators. It's really, like I said, health is an active process. And I'm very grateful. I've had my own health challenges in the past. I'm very grateful for the doctors that have been there for me. But today I understand that it all has to do with our mindset, with how prepared we are and how invested we are into doing our part. And most of the times, our part is 90% of the battle. It's not like, well, I just have to show up. Like, no, you really have to work for it.
Well, I totally agree, and I'm so grateful that people are taking the incentive to listen to your show. They're getting so much expertise. They're getting it in such a great way. You must have a fantastic bedside manner. So I congratulate you on that. And I also want all of your listeners to know that when you get a well-balanced idea of how you should get well, you still always would like an expert in your back court, and you're lucky to have Dr. E for that.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I can say pretty much the same thing about you. I'm sure your patients are very grateful. Any closing remarks? I think this has been a phenomenal show. I know that people have gotten a ton of info. I don't want to go any longer because then they're going to feel overwhelmed by so much things. But is there anything else? I know that people can reach you at mydoctorsuggests.com. Is there any other way to get in touch with you?
No, that's the best way to do that. And my producer, Andre, will take care of you and help you with all your needs there. We have a call center as well. Would it be okay if I shared a story of how important this is to me in my life?
Sure.
I went to Africa and I studied malaria because the children were dying. Almost half of them were dying before age 5. They get stung by a mosquito, get malaria, and they would die in just a very short time. So I wanted to go over and do everything I could do. I went over there and I took this silver liquid. Now, when I got there, I gave the children 2 teaspoons twice a day. And in the process of publishing the cure for malaria, in fact, it's on the wall over here, right behind my microscope. That's the cure for malaria in its peer-reviewed, published form. And the children were getting so much benefit. It was wonderful. Now, I presented this in a medical conference in London. And England is in charge of the World Health Organization's Malaria Foundation. So when I came home, I was surprised to have gotten a box, and it was about 1 foot by 1 foot cube, and it had the emblem of Buckingham Palace on it. It had the royal family's purple. Anyways, it was all this gorgeous wrapped box. Well, the ladies at my office couldn't wait, and they tore it open. They opened it up. They were like, from the Queen of England, what's going on here? So they opened it up, and inside they found that the people that were in charge of the Malaria Foundation had written me a letter. So I got a letter from Prince Charles, Prince Harry, Nelson Mandela, and the Prime Minister of England. They had each purchased one of my books, sent it to me, and asked if I would autograph it and send it back. Now, you know how I must have felt? Well, I felt terrific. And I've told this story for years, and I'm still telling it because you're going to feel the exact same way when you know how this works for yourself and you share it with somebody else. For something as minor as a fever blister, for something as simple as congestion, for something as major as a yeast infection that just won't go away, you're going to feel just as great because you know how to use these natural tools. And I got to tell you, it makes you feel really good when you get to help.
I'm sure it does. And just before we wrap up, did you sign those books for them?
Oh, I did. I signed those and sent those back. And, I didn't exactly know what to say to them. What would you write?
I have no idea.
What would you write? Would you just sign your name? Would you write it? You should have seen my office. These ladies were all running around. No, you should write this. No, you should write this. Well, here's a poem from a famous author. Here's you know what? Finally, I signed, God bless you and thank you. And that's what I signed it. And that was it. But what a joy for a couple of days when we were all thinking, what should we write?
I'm sure it was. Well, thank you so much again for stopping by. I'm sure that all of our listeners have gotten a tremendous education on the wonders of another substance that we're really getting to know about. Although, as you very clearly explained to us, it's been around for so many years. Now we're starting to see how we can utilize it to leverage our health and our well-being. And I'm sure that people listening are going to be very, very grateful that you were able to take time of your busy schedule of autographing books for British royalty to be here with us. So thank you so much for stopping by. Any parting words?
Just thank you and appreciate everybody. Just keep trying.
Thank you so much. This has been another episode of The Highway to Health. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Dr. E's Highway to Health show, helping you learn the science of living ageless. Did you enjoy the show? Please like, share, and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Dr. E wants to hear from you. Go to dre.show. Again, that's dre.show. Until next time, this is Dr. E's Highway to Health, helping you live ageless.